Hi, my name is Tyler Peterson. I am a web development manager for Family Search, which is the family history department of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Welcome to this virtual information session in a box for those that are looking for information about what it's like to have an internship at the church. Employment in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, is not a calling, but it is more than a job. This from our apostle, David A. Bednar. And I can say that for myself. It's not like a calling. A lot of times when you get a calling, you're not really prepared, at least not, you don't have an education that has prepared you for that calling. And the Lord strengthens you and stretches you throughout the time that you're serving in the church in that calling. But when it's a position that you've been hired to do for the church, it's normally something you've been trained for and that is you are highly proficient in. And if you're working for the church, you still have a calling that you need to fulfill. I was a scoutmaster most of the time, and now I'm working in the primary. Working for the church has the same feel as a calling in that you know that you're working in the Lord's kingdom on earth. And you know that He cares about the work that you're doing and will help you make it successful, even more so than when you're at a job somewhere else in the world. We normally would have an interactive portion of the information session at this point and say, what do you want when looking for a job? A lot of interns actually haven't asked themselves this question. A lot of candidates haven't asked themselves what they're really looking for. They just know it's something that could help them get a job, help them transition from academic life into their work life. So it's very helpful to get people to start asking themselves these questions. And here are some of the responses that we got the last time we did this. Learning opportunities, a good team to work with, good feedback so I can improve, a Theory Y atmosphere where everyone gets to feel involved. And that time I had to ask the student to explain to me Theory Y versus Theory X because I didn't know about it. But apparently Theory Y is a more collaborative atmosphere where everybody on the team is helping to set direction, and Theory X is one where it's more set top down. Challenges, internship, which is funny. You know, what do you look for in an internship? You look for an internship. That was really nice. Learning new things that let us be able to help others, opportunity for growth. Those are all great things. And I noticed that nobody mentioned money or necessarily transitioning into a full-time job after graduation. But we know that that's important, that it's not free to go to school, and that it is best if you can find an internship that is paid. And these are paid internships. And of course, we find tremendous satisfaction from being part of the way that students grow and become more ready for their professional career. It's not just that gets us into this internship program. We want to find the best people that we can find at the college time of their life, because a lot of times once somebody has found a good spot in a company, they don't really move around a lot, and when they do, it's through their personal network. So we run the internship program partially so that we can get access to good talent early on. So obviously we have an emphasis on transitioning interns into full-time employees, although that is not the goal that all of them do, and therefore we don't have a 100% transition rate. Your work will make a difference working for the church. Here is a page where we have some statistics to try and broaden people's mind, because most people have their own idea of the church as being the ward house that they attend, or if you're going to a church university, you see how big that university can be, but maybe you think of that university as separate from working for the church. Working for the church is a lot like working for any other large organization that has millions of users and thousands of installations and dozens of departments and is international and has to cope with over 100 languages. When you look at the statistics of the church, you see that it is a lot like working for a Fortune 500 company. And so a lot of the tools that we use to solve the problems that face the church are similar to those kinds of tools. And the level of professionalism and excellence that we expect working for the church is similar to Fortune 500 companies. Throughout this presentation, we have some videos recorded from former interns or managers that work for the church to give you a broader perspective of what it's like to work for the church, both in the ICS department, which is the main technology department of the church, and Family Search, which is a second and smaller department. Both of them still hire quite a lot of technologists. This video is going to talk to Hunter, a former intern, and what his experience was like.
From a professional standpoint, an internship with the church is not anything that would be taken lightly. I mean, it's not a church calling, you're working in a professional environment. And you're working for an organization that's as large as Fortune 500 companies and has infrastructure that's just as sophisticated as them. They have just as many problems and just as many things going on. They have sprints that are really high-paced, and you're having to work really hard to keep up with the demand of the work. There's absolutely a spiritual aspect to the environment here. I mean, all the employees, you can go up and ask them if they've had some kind of spiritual experience with guidance in their projects, and every single person here definitely has been impacted from the Spirit. I mean, there's a lot of troubleshooting that goes on in the tech industry, and you can ask anyone here, they've prayed about something, or they've felt some inkling that they needed to go straight to one area that normally, if you're going through a typical workflow, you wouldn't get to till later. They went straight there and found the problem immediately and were able to solve a very serious problem. When I accepted my internship with the church, I was really just hoping that I could work on something that wasn't just data entry. I wanted to do something that was going to have impact. And what I found was that I had a huge amount of trust placed in me. I felt like people really counted me as an employee, not just an intern. And I was expected to know what I was doing. And if I didn't know what I was doing, I was expected to learn it on my own. And that was something that required me to really pick up the pace and work hard to learn the things that I learned. When I was in my major, I thought that I knew what I was doing. I thought that I had a lot of experience with the different technologies, but come to find in a real work environment, you're going to have to learn how to solve problems that you had no idea were going to come up, how to work with technologies you never even dreamed existed. And the church definitely provides you with all of those aspects of what you want in a professional career.
It is challenging working for the church, and it is a top place to work. As you can see from this survey that was published in the Deseret News on March 17th, this is a rather local survey of places that you could work in the Salt Lake area. And the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints ranks number 1. You can see on the right that we also tell you that we hire over 200 interns per year, just to give you an idea of how many spots you're competing for when you do sign up for an interview with the church. Those interns could work on just about anything that ICS or Family Search is responsible for. Here you see 2 large properties that ICS is responsible for, ComeUntoChrist.org and the main churchofjesuschrist.org website, where you can go on and study the scriptures or even make charitable donations. In the background on the right, you can see FamilySearch.org, which of course holds a special place in my heart because that's where I work. And speaking of Family Search was also awarded one of the top 40 workplaces from the 2020 Gallup Exceptional Workplace Award. In this next video, we've already seen a little bit about what it's like to have an internship at ICS. Hunter was working in ICS. This video focuses on what it's like to work at Family Search.
I'm the first one in my family to be a member of the church, and my ancestors have been waiting a long time. I just found my first name, and they said I was able to take it to the temple. I know my grandparents and my ancestors have been waiting a long time. And I can start my ancestry work for my family. To find these names is something very special to me.
Here at Family Search, we have 4.5 million unique visitors a month, 1.3 billion names in Family Tree, over 360,000 monthly unique users using our mobile apps, and over 1 billion images of records digitized and published. As an engineer, as a developer, a UX designer, imagine the challenge of having to develop a site that's easy for every person in the entire world, no matter what country you grew up in or what language you speak. It makes you relevant. We have to stay up on the latest technologies because current technologies don't make it. They're not good enough.
Here we encourage all of our developers to continue to learn and grow. We also provide some time for you every 2 weeks to try out new techniques and new technologies so that you can stay on the cutting edge.
So we're trying to develop the skills and the talent. We feel everybody have something to contribute.
Here we understand that we need to mentor a person, we need to coach them, we need to give them exposure and have them interact with several different teams and understand how we do our work, and we're okay with that. Because we're not in it for the short term, we're in it for the long haul.
In school, you learn all this stuff and then you go online because you're like, I'm going to stay on top of all the technology, and you go online and it's just like overwhelming. But working at Family Search, there's web developers here that are just brilliant.
I have people there that they've done it. They've gone through this process, and when I make mistakes, they're there to help correct me.
I think the mentorship at Family Search is great because they let you build real things on the site. And so we're participating not just in some intern side project, but we're actually committing code to the website.
And that's one of the things that's really fun, is that you have opportunities to contribute in lots of different ways and in lots of different places.
Working for the church, you're going to find that it's very competitive with all of the pay, benefits, etc. You're going to find this very competitive. However, working for Family Search allows me to spend my time on a deeply meaningful purpose.
This actually facilitates one of their divine responsibilities of temple ordinances.
There are a lot of people out there that are asking me, why are you working with Family Search? You could work for other design companies. Any other company can pay me whatever they want, but it's not going to be the same as knowing that you're working for the Lord Jesus Christ and that you're making a difference to people's lives.
It's really important to continue honing your skills in this industry because it enables you to be more useful in whatever role you fill. It also enables you to grow in the responsibilities that you can take on.
So it's okay if we can develop somebody that will produce amazing things for us for many, many years to come. We're willing to invest in the initial development of their skills. And I think other companies expect you to come out the door and be ready to go. And you're on your own. I just think here it's amazing how well we help each other.
It's true that we do try to look out for each other and help one another grow, and that the management philosophy at both of these departments is much more long-term than you would find in a lot of places. It may be more similar to working at other nonprofits, or maybe even working for government. I've found that there is still quite a sense of urgency to complete tasks and to make progress, because we know that all of the funds are sacred. So there is an urgency that you would find in a commercial venture. There is also a long-term stability that you tend to only find in very large corporations or government or academic institutions. One of the most popular areas that students are concerned with is mobile development. We do have a number of mobile applications that run natively are compiled to run natively on a mobile device. Speaking of mobile, what are some technologies that you might be passionate about? Is there an opportunity to use those at the church? These are some of the responses that we got last time. People were interested in learning React for web development, Puppeteer.js library for automating processes in JavaScript, Gospel Living app, Node.js, Adobe Creative Cloud, Python. I learned that we do use Python, both in some AI machine learning applications, as well as scripting infrastructure changes. I've also always wanted to learn React, C++, Heroku, which is the platform as a service that we do use at Family Search, Wahoo, which I don't really know what that is. And here this is a manager stepping in and saying, yeah, ACE uses Python for machine learning. Azure, as in Azure DevOps. Here's an example of some of the technologies that we use. This is by no means exhaustive. You can see that some of the things that were mentioned are on here, like Heroku. Of course, much of our backend is written in Java. There are some opportunities to use C#. Both Family Search and ICS use React for their new code in the front end. And a lot of code is running in Node.js, as you can see in the top right. We also have some pretty significant investment in database technology, some that you may not have heard of, like MarkLogic or Cassandra, and others that you've probably heard of, like PostgreSQL and MySQL. Back to thinking about working at ICS, this is a message from ICS's director and others.
When I was going to college, internships were guys that fetched coffee. First off, we don't have coffee here. Our interns are up to their elbows doing real-world IT work.
I don't really know what I was expecting. I definitely didn't think that they were going to be super high-tech. I thought it would be pretty retro. But what I found was I got to work on a lot of really large-scale, really cutting-edge projects.
This organization is large enough that there are teams that are specifically dedicated to figuring out bleeding-edge technologies.
We are implementing industry best practices, standards, technologies.
Tools like Power BI and Tableau, and using
cutting-edge Oracle, SQL Server, Microsoft programs. We use Cassandra for big data, MarkLogic, that just crunches bunches of data.
We were picking up React, and they just created this use hooks.
Cloud is the future. We don't necessarily need to do that right now, but we're going to do it now.
You know, when you go into an internship, you never really know what your responsibilities are going to be.
I thought I was going to be just an intern, but there is no just an intern. I'm the same as everyone else on my team.
This internship was awesome. I was able to learn a ton of awesome marketable skill sets.
They get assignments from front-end to back-end development.
I remember instances where I was using tools that past interns had created, and now I got to add to that toolkit for my team.
They put me in meetings, they put me in situations, gave me opportunities, huge opportunities, where I really could learn and rise to those occasions.
Things that we have our interns engaged in is hardcore IT.
I was entrusted with responsibilities and treated like a full-time employee.
There's so much to learn here at the church. It's always changing and growing.
I was given all these tasks that I'd never had any idea how to do that before, so it required me to study, it required me to ask questions, get me out of my comfort zone, work with the team members and the other interns.
An intern can expect to sit down with someone who has 30+ years of industry experience and even experience on the bleeding edge technology, where they can ask questions, learn from the experts, how do I apply this in my life, and how can I set the stage for my future career?
The mentors that I've had in ICS here have been amazing. Everything that they've taught me has just been valuable.
And I've learned so much from them because of that one-on-one interaction that they're willing to give me.
But having people who know their stuff, who know the ins and outs of the industry, who know how to be successful, then invest in you is awesome.
We have some of the most complex and incredible challenges of any organization that I've ever worked with ever. And that just makes for an exciting environment.
It's so fun to be a part of this, to see, wow, the church is really utilizing technology in such a good way.
Never have I worked at a place where my personal beliefs and the things that I truly value and that my family values have been so closely aligned with the work that I do.
Perhaps here at the church, more than any other professional environment, is just, you start meetings with prayers, you have spiritual thoughts, you really do everything you can to invite the Spirit to help lead and direct you as you go day to day. That's something I'd be really hesitant to leave, just because you don't get that anywhere else.
You get to attend a devotional every week. You get to walk down the hall and see a picture of Christ, and that's something that's really unique.
We're able to seek guidance to help us to know what to do when we're having challenges, and I think that's amazing.
I feel like I'm doing good in the world. I'm adding value in the world in a unique way.
You'll have an opportunity to make a real difference in the lives of people every single day.
It's like painting gold on your resume. It really is such a great help for you in your career.
The gospel's the most important thing, so what could you be doing that's more important? It's a huge learning environment. I've learned so much. I've made lifelong friends. It's been one of the most valuable experiences of my life, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
So where would you end up working if you got the internship? Well, we have two main centers of technology, one in Riverton, which is in the southern end of the Salt Lake Valley, and then one in Lehi, which is where the Family Search building is. There are also some internships or some teams that work in Riverton that also have responsibility in downtown Salt Lake, although it wouldn't be common for an intern to be required to work both in downtown Salt Lake and Riverton. Any of those sorts of details you could definitely work out with a manager, either before you accept the offer or after accepting the offer. There's also a curiosity about, well, that's all well and good, but what does it look like right now with COVID-19? Are the offices a little bit more remote? And yes, currently all employees are working remote until further notice. The buildings are open, and those that need to go to the building because of whatever circumstance might exist at home, they're allowed to, and there are protocols that you have to follow when working in the office. But the vast majority of us are working from home. Here's some details about those internships. They're 4 months long. They typically start in January, May, or September, although we do have flexibility to start pretty much any time of the year. Interviews this month are for May or September internships, and I'm recording this in February. If I was recording this in October, we do recruiting in February and October, those interviews would be for internships starting in January and May. They're all full-time, 40 hours per week. It's possible that you could do a 20-hour per week internship, but it's very unlikely. So it's best to try and make yourself available for a 40-hour per week internship. We hire approximately 200 interns per year, as I said on an earlier slide, with the clarification that these are technical internships and not things like public relations. Paid compensation, as mentioned before, at competitive rates. We try to keep an eye on what all of these services go for. We compare ourselves with the industry. We hire other companies to do benchmarking against what we pay and what others pay for similar services, and we keep those pay rates competitive. There are medical benefits offered in some locations. All intern candidates have to be members of the church and temple worthy. Like mentioned before, we often do have interns transitioning to a longer term engagement with the church, and on average about 40% of interns are offered some sort of post-internship employment. Sometimes that's a part-time student engineer position, sometimes it's a temporary position, sometimes it's a full-time engineering position as an employee. A quick note from Allison Gray, the head recruiter for the internship program. Fall or January internships are less competitive, meaning fewer people are applying for them, and that raises your chance for an offer. Some universities like BYU Idaho make it very easy for students, or actually push students, to be applying throughout the year, depending on what track that you're on. If you absolutely have to do your internship in the summer, just know that a lot of universities have all of their students doing their internships in the summer, and so you're competing in a much harsher environment than those that are willing to start in January or September. If you need to know more or have further interest, Allison posted her email here, and hopefully you'll find that of use. What type of internships are you seeking? Like I mentioned, this is a technical internship we're talking about. Here's some responses that we got yesterday. PR for me, which for me means pull request in GitHub, but I'm sure that they were talking about public relations. Maybe they were responding as a joke to something that I had said. We're not offering any PR internships, any public relations internships. I've heard that there is a project management internship. That's true. Web development. Hey, I'm hiring for web development. Software development or web development. Software, web, or QA. Software engineering, which we would just call software development. QA or security analyst. We have most of those. As you can see in this list, most of those things that were mentioned are on the list. The things that we hire greater numbers of tend to be towards the top of the list, fewer numbers of towards the bottom. A couple of tips on what you might apply for if you're not entirely sure on what you want to do. We hire far more quality assurance engineers relative to the number who apply than any other category. If you apply in quality assurance or infrastructure or IT, then you are well qualified, you're more likely to get an offer because there are fewer people applying compared to how many positions we have open. Software development and web development are the most popular internships. So if that's what you apply for, you are less likely to get an offer even if you're well qualified, and you'll have to do something very impressive. This is one of the reasons why most of the web development interns that I hire have already done web development professionally. Not most, but many. Because we just have so much interest in these internships that we can afford to select those that are actually rather experienced. And then we can take those interns, put them on a team, and take that experience to the next level. be prepared to code for these interviews, especially if you're doing a software development, quality assurance, or web development interview. I know that even in the infrastructure interviews, you often have to code. And the business intelligence interviews, you'll often have to do SQL. So be prepared to code. With that said, make sure that you practice whatever code you anticipate coding in, whatever language that is, make sure and practice that 24 or 36 or 48 hours before the interview. If you've had a class or if you had a job in that language, but you haven't touched it for 6 months or a year, don't just count on it all to come back to you. These interviews are very fast-paced. We have very little time to assess what you're capable of. And we must make the assessment based on what you demonstrate in the interview. We can't just take your word for it or look at your resume. We have to make an assessment based on what you can demonstrate in the interview. This is how we try to make hiring fair, so that we're not just hiring people that we like, because if you like somebody, a lot of times that's because they're like you, and we don't have very much diversity that way. So in order to keep hiring fair, we try to hire just based on your ability to demonstrate proficiency for the responsibilities that you'll be responsible for, the responsibilities you'll be carrying out as an intern. And so that means you have a short amount of time to give it your best shot. I can't tell you how many times I've been interviewing somebody, and they stumble over something that is simple, something they will have to do all the day long, like declaring a function. They can't remember how to declare a function because, yeah, they've done 100 hours of JavaScript, but it was a year ago, and they can't remember. And I'm sorry, but I have to make the determination based on what you demonstrate, and there are a lot of other candidates that are going through the trouble of having all of that refreshed in their memory, and they're just outperforming you in the interview. So when we say be prepared to code, we don't just mean don't be surprised when we ask you to code. We also mean prepare yourself so that you're ready to code in the language that we expect to hire you in. For web development, that's HTML, CSS, but primarily JavaScript. You have to know how to deal with those other ones, but JavaScript is the big deal. For software engineering, it's primarily Java. Although I've spoken to many managers that hire for software engineering that say, I don't really care if they are up to speed in Java. I'll accept pretty much any systems programming language that I'm familiar with. And most of them are familiar with Java, C#, C++, things like that. So if you don't know Java, but you know C++ or C# backwards and forwards, don't stress out too much. You might want to take a primer on Java so you can see what's similar between them. Maybe you can make the jump and implement the algorithm they ask for in Java. But if you have to focus and you only have a little bit of time, it's better for you to refresh yourself on the language you already know than to try and develop a new skill at the last minute. Virtual interviews are a day or two after whatever fair is supposed to happen that time of the year. So there are career fairs and STEM fairs in February and October, about that time frame, every year. And the interviews are always a day or two after those fairs at whatever university you attend. Allison Gray works very hard to know those schedules for every university and to put those interviews right after those fairs so that we can go to the career fair, answer all of your questions, get our interviews filled up, and then execute those interviews before too much time has passed. For a lot of universities, the word is out, and they know that this is a great place to work, and so oftentimes students are very unhappy to hear when they attend the career fair that all of the interview spots are gone. They've all been filled. So to give you a tip, to give you the best chance of getting one of those interview spots, I'll just tell you right now, if it's the beginning of the year, beginning of the calendar year, Allison Gray posts all of those interview schedules on Handshake or whatever platform your university uses on New Year's Day. She posts all of those interviews. So if you get in the second week of the semester and go into your career services platform for scheduling interviews, you'll be able to find interviews with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and that way you'll be at the front of the line. The same thing goes in the fall. Allison will get on Labor Day and post all of the interview schedules on that day so that they will be up for at least a month by the time we come to your career fair and perform those interviews. So if you didn't get an interview this time, please go in next time. Put it on your calendar. As soon as the semester starts, come in, find those interviews, and sign up. We often will lock down those interviews the day of the career fair, even when they're not full, so that we can dole out those interviews, those open interview spots to the people that we meet at the career fair. So if you get on close to the career fair, a few hours before it starts, and it's locked down, just remember to come to the career fair and talk to us about getting on the schedule. And even if our schedule is full, it's always worth it to try and send an email to Allison and ask if there's any way that you can be put on the schedule. Talk to the manager that is over that particular discipline, whether it's QA, software development, web development, whatever. Talk to them so they can have a high opinion of you. They'll send an email to Allison saying, hey, if so-and-so contacts you, try and get them into the schedule. And then you can contact Allison and you can say, hey, I'm sorry, I did everything I could. I'm not on the schedule. If you have any cancellations, if you have any no-shows, I just need this much notice and I will happily get in and get an interview. The early bird gets the worm, the early worm gets the bird. And if the same thing is true with these interviews, I am surprised how many times people come to me and they are desperate and I give them these tips and then they don't contact Allison. They don't send an email. I can't remember how many times I've given somebody my personal email and said, give me an email if you have further questions, and they never contact me. So when we hand out this information, be brave and do contact us. Do try to get on the schedule, because really the worst thing that's going to happen is we'll say no. That's the worst thing that's going to happen. And it's worth it to try. I love working for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I know that it's a blessing that I've been able to enjoy for many years, and I hope that I can be part of your journey to work, even if it's only for a few months, for that church. I know that you will have a wonderful experience that will help prepare you for a long and productive professional career, as well as help solidify some principles on how you can be a successful professional and still a very faithful Latter-day Saint. Thank you so much for your time. I hope that this has been helpful.